everybody. It's Peter Mullins again. Great to have you here for another episode of Fora. Really excited to have Sarah Maunder here, who's going to be talking a little bit about her priorities over at Indigo Slate. So, Sarah, if you don't mind, would you, first off, welcome, and second, would you mind giving a quick intro to yourself and to Indigo Slate?
Yeah, sure. Hi. I'm Sarah Maunder. I'm the Director of Marketing at Indigo Slate, and I wear two hats. The first part is I look after a delivery team. We're an agency, so I have a team of marketing strategists and campaign managers who work on client projects, and there's a lot of variety in there. And the other half of my job is to look after Indigo Slate's marketing alongside some of our other leadership. And that's also like a very growing and important priority for us. That's just given where our business is, we were recently acquired about 3 years ago, and there's quite a lot of change happening in the way that we're going to market. So I'm incredibly excited about that. Just the opportunity for us to realign our own go-to-market and get that marketing engine running. But there's also a lot of rich insights that I'm learning about from working with some of the big clients that we do. And we're in the B2B space mostly, working with technology clients quite a lot, the likes of Microsoft and AWS and VMware.
That's great. And then you, of course, we know each other from back at Micro Focus, one of the largest software companies in the world today. And back then it was a growing B2B software company as well, and you were doing marketing programs there.
Yeah, which is kind of by another name, I would call it a campaign manager role now. And I'm starting to realize the differences in just terminology, especially UK to US and things like that. Mm-hmm. That was actually my first and really big significant in-house gig, which was a really useful experience for me to understand how the machinery of marketing organizations works in a company of that size, and especially when you've got that notion of corporate marketing and then how the field can leverage that. Obviously now things are a little bit different. I'm kind of looking in on that towards my clients, and I think it's been a useful experience to be able to sit in their shoes.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, like as a product marketer at that time, working with you, so being in the US and you being in the UK, I'll tell you, it was great to have someone that that was an ally for the product, at HQ. So that was a terrific interaction and that we had there. So that's why it's such a pleasure to talk to you again. Yeah. Well, so let's jump in. So what, it sounds like when you're doing consulting that a lot of the work is focused on helping a business to increase its valuations. So some of your clients, like increasing their presence in market. How do you think about when you're looking at a new client, let's say, how do you think about like diagnosing what their challenges are? They may come to you with a question, but how do you think about getting below that question?
Yeah, I think ultimately, yes, like the whole valuation piece is the end goal of everybody, but the type of clients that we're working with are so big and broad that we're working with, like down the chain, if you know what I mean. So we're not, whilst we're working with customers at corporate HQ, we're not at the top of the tree. We're kind of, there's so many individual budget holders who have individual lines of business and responsibilities and programs that they're trying to launch. So all of those are coming together. You have to, I think the healthiest way for me to think about it is that each of those lines of business or areas is almost like its own little business. Mm-hmm. And so, you're contributing towards the broader goal. And we have to get in there, and as marketers, we have to understand the commercial landscape in order to solve for it with marketing help. Yeah. So if that's, in terms of like software products, like we're retiring one, we're trying to move everyone over here, we're trying to get people onto the cloud away from on-premises. Well, then there's a lot of behavioral shifts that you're trying to do. And I think there's a real easy temptation just to fall into like, hey, we've built a thing, here's what it does, go and get it. And it's like, right. The world's too complex now for that to happen. There's just too much variety and too many other situations. So one thing that we really try and bring to this in terms of the creative thinking, there's the mechanisms of the, where do we place that message and what are we asking people to do? But then within there, we have to go a step further and say, and how are we going to appeal to their kind of willingness to listen? How are we going to, number one, stop them, and number two, give them a compelling reason? So emotion always comes into it. And that's what I really love about the job, is that even though I can say I've spent my career in B2B technology largely, we're still talking to people. We still have to get into their heart and understand what it is that motivates them. So I really enjoy that. First stage for us is about, understanding what they're trying to do, understanding who they're trying to speak to specifically, because you have to be pretty focused.
Right.
You can't treat everybody with the same kind of message, because their needs are going to be different. And then how do you craft a message and put it in the right place that they're going to see it and hopefully respond to it.
Right. That must be a challenge though. Like when you're sitting down with a client for the first time, are most of them thinking, I want to increase revenue, I got to get more dollars up on the board, and they're not really, they're more at that campaign level, if you will, and not thinking about the storytelling that you're talking about. Do you find that there's a mind shift that you have to get across to your customers?
I think sometimes it's just about showing them the potential that it's there. And, that I work with a bunch of people who do the storytelling piece and can build that emotion in as their full-time job. And my team, our job really is to set them up with all the right information so that they're building the right message on it. I'm probably more akin to the client who's sitting there going, yeah, I'd love to get some fun and emotion and flair into this, but I'm not sure what it's going to be. And then we get that opportunity to surprise and delight them with that, like, hey, how about we do it this way? How about we, we sometimes talk about manifestos in campaign creation, where you can just be like that rallying cry. Right. And that can be, especially if you can give a campaign room to breathe over like 3 or 6 or 12 months, you can really get momentum behind it and really land that message.
And in terms of like how that can lead to the valuation, like how have you seen that impact your clients, this idea of bringing that storytelling and connecting to that emotional
I
side?
think that a lot of our clients are doing this, and like I say, we often are working at like a slightly lower level than where we kind of get impacted by what the central marketing orgs are doing. So clients now are recognizing that they need to bring vibrancy and humanity, and they need to bring storytelling. They need to connect on an emotional level. They need to, just enhance whatever reputation they already have for being trusted. They don't want to then fall into just being sort of staid and boring and part of the wallpaper.
Right.
So we kind of take that and roll with it and try and enhance it. And agencies often get the opportunity to just stretch their legs a little bit more.
Yeah.
So whatever the foundations of the brand guidelines are, well, we can push within reason, and we always have to then work with the brand teams to make sure that we're compliant and everything, and not sort of abusing the brand. Absolutely not. But yeah, just kind of seeing how it can stretch or be presented in different ways. Slightly different form factors, or if there's just like a new styling to the creative. And I know I'm focusing a lot on what it looks like, but there's that's the bit that we do see. We have to recognize that there's a lot of thinking that goes into deciding what it will be, what it will say.
Right. Yeah. So do you, when you're trying to find out what that story is, maybe just walk me through some of that process if you can. Like, is it mostly with the client, or are you also working with your clients, or how do you dig into that?
Yeah, mostly with the client, just for the size of the organizations that we're working with. I always really do enjoy it when we get to work with slightly smaller organizations, and you can almost get your arms around the entire marketing team. Right. Whereas with some of the bigger ones, you're never going to really impact or have that connection. We have to, so we're working with the intelligence that they have, and that's sometimes that they've got some really strong brand research, they've got some usage metrics, they've got prior campaign data they can give us. Mm-hmm. And then one of the most important things is to just like baseline. I mentioned earlier about audience, like who are we talking to? What's the situation? If you're trying to migrate people from this platform to this platform, let's be super specific. Is it, is there a version situation here? Is there like a very specific need? Getting hyper focused on that segmentation, and then recognizing that maybe we don't want to serve the same message out to each of those folks. Mm-hmm. It's by narrowing that down that we can get to the point of messaging, channels to market, right? Starting to put together those KPIs and targets and things like that. Yeah. And frankly, often the execution is handled by our clients, so we are somewhat removed from knowing how well they've performed. Yeah. But the ones where they're in market for longer than just 6 weeks or something like that are the ones where we can stay a little bit closer. And
that's great.
Yeah.
So now I guess maybe if we turn from the setting of the conversation with their end customer to more so the campaign elements of it. Do you have sort of a standard toolkit for the metrics that you bring to your customers, or are you working with more their metrics that they want to use?
Do you mean platforms or KPIs?
KPIs.
Well, mostly there's kind of the ultimate KPIs, like someone will say we want to move people from here to here, and so at the end of a year they're going to, or 6 months or a quarter, they're going to look at that number.
Yeah.
But we often use other metrics just from like a marketing indication. So we would recommend looking at, if it's social media advertising, the engagement rate with that, time on page when people are there, making sure that tagging and tracking is in place that can give that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, most of this is handled and already available within the client's marketing infrastructure.
Right.
So we are just, providing on a platter and letting them go. But yeah, I think that's an important one, because moving the needle takes such a long time. And my biggest thing with what we do is that we're not, it's not a mathematical equation. You can't say for certainty that this campaign, this message is going to land completely right first time out. But what we can do is give ourselves a platform to test within it. So we can create parameters. We can create like, hey, here's what our next test could be, and our next test could be, and our next test could be. Right. Here's how we might optimize it when we start to see data coming in. So that's the really fun bit. Like if you can get in there and you realize that it can be small tweaks as well. It might just literally be a word.
Yeah.
It can be a really significant and meaningful test that changes results drastically.
Yeah, I got to imagine the experimentation is a real fun part. And so could that experimentation be, like you say, a single word? It also could be different audience or a different medium entirely. Do you do a lot of variations at sort of both levels, that micro, wording up to, form factor?
So from the audience, like probably wouldn't switch out the audience necessarily. Definitely want to know that, like that audience mapping and that segmentation at the outset, and be specific. And if you're addressing 4 segments at one time, then it's almost like 4 mini campaigns is the way I think of it.
Right.
But within that, then yes, there's still opportunity to kind of tweak. We would still also, and to your point about, I think it was related to channels, making sure that we're covering our bases. So we're not just saying, hey, it's an email campaign, go. We're talking about the fact that we're probably, a very common scenario is promoting, doing lead generation. So, you're creating a media plan that covers social and programmatic and some, other paid placements, content syndication, that kind of thing. And then getting people in. So automatically you're going to see a huge range of results from that program. Like, hey, Twitter's doing great for us, but actually by the numbers it is, but the quality of the leads that are coming out at the other end isn't good. Whereas LinkedIn, you pay more there, and you're probably going to get fewer, but the chances are that they're the right ones.
Right.
They're more highly engaged. So there's all of those dials that you're twisting up and down. So, and then you're mapping through a campaign and the longer journey, which takes them into email nurture and beyond.
Right. So I imagine that must mean that you're having to do metrics at like all throughout the funnel and adjust and adapt, based on early signs. Like you said, with leads coming in, like ideally, I imagine you'd want to see, did they turn into, lifetime high LTV customers that are, 7 years down the road, but you don't have the luxury of that. So I imagine it's, best guesses based on early funnel metrics, and then just kind of keep, as you get more and more data in. Is that true?
It's definitely true. And the best ones are, like I said, if we get more chance to see how it's performing and if we're connected with the sales team. So if then we're handing leads off to sellers and we're saying, hey, by our estimations, these are ready for you to follow up. We've created the scoring framework. They've engaged with enough emails and spent enough time on our pages that we feel they're ready to go. The sellers may then get their hands on them and be like, whoa, not a chance. Or, yeah, fantastic. So, do we raise that bar or do we lower that bar for qualification? So, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you end up being sort of a broker between sales and marketing? Do you find is it like coming in as an outside party?
I don't know. We're an agency, so I think that being in that situation means that you're somewhat outside of that. I mean, we try and represent sales as much as marketing. We have like that kind of specialism in-house as well. So sales
Mm,
enablement, sales training is a part of our remit. Not always within the same any given project, but we can speak the language of the sellers as much as the language of the marketers. So trying to bridge that is being a good partner and trying to facilitate a strong relationship, then yes, but I know where you're getting at. I'm not sure about.
that's fair. That's fair. Every client's different, so it's no
Yeah.
there's no okay, great. Well, in terms of like outcomes from an improved brand strength perspective, like do you feel like we spent the latter half discussing the lead generation perspective. How would you go about measuring like in improvements to the brand overall?
And it's something that again we don't do an awful lot of with our clients, but they often have the size of companies, they have big research teams and departments and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So we can tap into some of their research. You also think like a company like Microsoft has so many different offerings to so many different groups. They've got a consumer audience for their office products and packages, and then they've got small business and enterprise. There's just so many lenses to look through
Mm-hmm.
to get that impression. So yeah, we don't get super involved with that, fortunately. I wish we did.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough. Well, we're running out of time here, so maybe I can ask you one more question, and that's, if you had to offer some advice to someone that was a consultant or a marketer within a marketing agency, um, how would you suggest they market their own business? Like how we've been talking a lot about the work that you do for your clients, but as you said, you market your own company. So what advice would you give the cobbler's children, I guess?
Yeah, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this, so I like
Yeah.
this question. There's a temptation to make it feel like everything we do is so smart, no one else can do it.
Hmm.
But you can't do that. Like we have to be approachable. We have to simplify the way we talk about ourselves, and somewhat generalize the services that we provide people. That
Hmm.
doesn't devalue them. That doesn't mean that we don't get to bring a ton of different pieces to those solutions. It's just that from the clear communication standpoint,
Hmm.
then let's make that an easy kind of entry point. And then of course there's just things like strong relationships and good credibility from the work that you've done, which will absolutely prove it out in the long
Right.
run.
That's right. Well, great, Sarah. It was super great pleasure to chat with you again,
Yeah.
and really enjoyed your insights and thoughts.
Thank you very much for the time, Peter. It's been great.
Absolutely.